saving you.
I mean, how crazy is this scene? I feel like going into this film, we all knew what we were getting ourselves into, right? We're gonna get a story about, D-16 and Orion Pax.
Orion Pax.
Orion Pax.
Who cares?
Sorry, more people need to talk about that. Anyways, we're going to get a tragic tale about this friendship that eventually heads south somehow, and then we finally get, Optimus and Megatron and their swarm enemies. And I mean, that is what happened, right? So how did this scene feel so emotionally charged? Like, was I the only one surprised at this moment? It was unbelievable. We knew what was going to happen. We felt it coming, and yet I still felt this wave of disbelief. Like, I couldn't believe what just happened here. There's just so many conflicting emotions during the scene, and it really felt like we were hanging on D-16 fingertips. Like, what's going on? I think we can agree that this has to come from the complexity of these two characters' relationship. Like, there's just so many layers to how these two communicate to each other and how they interact. And not even just in the later half of the movie, but even down to the first time we see them talk to each other.
Yeah, I had to jump out of a window this time. Almost died. It was wild.
And digging through ancient data is worth dying for.
Yes, it is.
We can see a bit of D-16's main frustration there, but we'll talk about that later, or else I'll sound crazy. So, why did D-16 kill Orion Pax? That is today's question. I know that's a little dramatic, but I mean, that's literally what happened here, right? We get a moment of consideration from D-16. He deliberately lets go of Orion and then leaves him for dead, and Orion is never seen again. As a matter of fact, both D-16 and Orion Pax are just gone. Their bond is severed, and from here on out, it's only Megatron and Optimus. And yes, I'm aware that Orion was the one who got himself shot. There is no doubt that he was willing to die by standing in D's way, if that's what would have stopped his friend from heading down this violent path that he's so afraid of. But that's not the point here. I want to focus on D-16's decision to let go of Orion, to let go of their relationship, their past, because I think something really interesting is actually going on here. Now, allow me to point out something that is so interesting to me. Ever since my second watch, I could not stop thinking about this. Alright, how does D-16's relationship to Sentinel change throughout the story? We'll start here. Bear with me. In the beginning, D-16 views Sentinel as the perfect idol. He's the Prime that is working tirelessly to restore the Matrix, to restore Energon to the planet, to avenge the fallen Primes. He's the golden leader. D-16 admires his flawless leadership and trusts him to bring Cybertron to prosperity.
Humility and presence. That's leadership.
And any concerns down here? Who cares? Sentinel will take care of us. We just have to keep supporting him.
Yeah, I felt it. I did. But it doesn't matter. We're going to get punished and demoted. Oh, Sentinel Prime saw the whole thing. This is so embarrassing.
I could be more, sure, but what does it matter as long as we're supporting Sentinel's work? And if we could get his approval, even better. Basically, with D-16, we have this very idolized perspective of Sentinel, where he's willing to put all his faith, no matter what, into his leader, above any other concern. Okay, now we're headed to the surface to find the Matrix, and why does D-16 go? Listen carefully.
No way. Absolutely not.
Hey, D, come on. This could be our chance to show everyone that
You
we're
already
not...
tried to show everyone in the race. You tricked me into running, which got us stuck down here.
Searching for the Matrix is stupid. It's another foolish plan by Orion that will get him into trouble. And what would he rather do?
I'm waiting right here until Sentinel Prime finds us.
Why would we do something so foolish to miss out on a chance to experience Sentinel's favor firsthand? But look at what convinces him to go.
Hey, D, what do you think Sentinel's reaction would be if you personally handed him the Matrix of leadership that you found?
Okay, stop.
Getting to the Matrix to impress everyone and show them that they're stronger than they think doesn't matter, never did, but if they could impress their perfect leader...
It's definitely working. I'm in.
I'm in, he says. Okay, now we get to the surface, and again, we get a reminder of why D-16 agreed to go.
Hey, you're thinking about what you'll say when you hand the Matrix to Sentinel, aren't you?
I can't help it.
He's mostly considering the idea of Sentinel's reaction to his hard work and support. It's all he can think about. Alright, let's pause here for a moment because I actually lied. Sentinel Prime is not D-16's perfect idol. It's somebody else. Someone cooler, bigger, badder than Sentinel. And of course, that is none other than Megatronus Prime.
Megatronus Prime.
I spent a lot of time thinking about Megatronus and what he meant to D-16. It's clear that he was his favorite of all the Primes, Sentinel included.
But I can understand why you'd want to wear his face over mine.
But with these events we just discussed, we're lulled into this idea that Sentinel is D-16's golden hero or whatever, which isn't entirely wrong, but it's obvious that his real hero is Megatronus Prime. He even says it himself.
Oh, yeah, well, he's my hero.
The greatest prime to ever live.
Megatronus, my hero, not Sentinel. He just happened to be the next Prime that was alive to idolize. So why is this important? Well, let's look back at what's going on at this point with Sentinel. This is the part of the story where they go out and find the dead primes, and D-16 witnesses firsthand who Sentinel Prime really is. And, well, he's a fraud. And not only that, but he's a fraud who he dedicated his life to, only to find out that Sentinel literally stole his entire life from him. But there's also another detail here. Rewind a little bit, take a look at D-16's first reaction to Megatronus' dead body. He didn't say anything, but you can see it in his face. This isn't a reaction of grief or loss or even wonder. This is a look of vengeance. Megatronus' death is incredibly personal to D-16. He's frustrated by it. So imagine how disgusted he must have felt to see Sentinel himself decapitate Megatronus. Listen to how D-16 describes how he feels about Sentinel here. He says that every day has been a lie and that Sentinel deceived everyone, and then he says this.
Sentinel lied to my face.
Sentinel lied to my face, he says. No one else here is describing it like this, and it's not like D-16 is the only bot that felt betrayed by Sentinel. He just seems to be the most personally offended by it. And the entire rest of the film, we actually see that this path for vengeance becomes his entire life mission, and it's deeply, deeply personal for him.
Don't you want to stop him?
No, I want to kill him!
It's like what he's saying here is that nothing matters to him as long as Sentinel suffers for what he did. Now, after Sentinel's betrayal, we see a complete 180 in how D-16 views leadership. All his devotion and trust in leaders that we saw earlier is gone. That entire train of thought is just cut off for him.
With Alpha's proof inside that device, we will show everyone the truth.
You honestly believe it'll be that easy? I trusted Sentinel with everything. I will never trust a so-called leader ever again.
And what do we see after this? D is introduced to yet another leader, and the first thing he does is walk away, then attack Starscream for getting in his way. It's a specific mindset that he adopts for the rest of the film, that he's just going to do what he thinks is right, and no one can tell him otherwise.
I found out that Sentinel is rotten today, and I'm going to make him pay for it. Today!
He also mentioned it here earlier.
I got it.
Okay.
And even later on, which is why he refuses to return to Pax.
Arachnet is the answer.
I'm doing this my way.
Now, fast forward a little bit, and he actually does get to Sentinel himself. Remember, his stakes are even more personal after his earlier incident. And when Pax tries wrestling him to stop, what does he say?
He took everything from us. I have to do this.
I have to do this. I have to make him pay for what he's done, and I will not let anyone get in my way.
Pax, you need to move out of my way before I move you myself.
Not even my closest friend. Okay, let's stop there because we all know what happens next. And let's take a step back and talk about what happened. How does D-16's relationship with Sentinel change? Well, he idolized this leader, he put all his trust in him, and then he got betrayed. From then on, D-16 vowed to never trust leadership again and decided to take actions into his own hands. And this isn't just a loss of trust, it's a determined commitment to never let anyone take control over his actions ever again. He becomes this unstoppable force of a Cybertronian who will get what he wants or die trying. Remember, he was completely ready to die in Sentinel's tower here if it wasn't for Pax's crew interrupting. Why? Because he is never putting himself below a bot like Sentinel, or anyone for that matter, ever again. He would rather die. And that is where D-16 is with Sentinel. Of course, he ends up killing him with his bare hands and becomes leader of the Decepticons, deliberately forging his own path in life, becoming his own leader, and this is the end of his arc to becoming Megatron in this film. Okay, now let me ask a different question, and this is where things got really interesting to me. How does D-16's relationship with Orion Pax change? Let's recap some of the important interactions these two had throughout the film. D-16 hears about Pax's archive expedition and disapproves.
Yeah, I had to jump out of a window this time. Almost died. That's wild.
And digging through ancient data is worth dying for.
Yes, it is.
He witnesses Pax ruin someone else's career for his mistake.
Alita.
Next time, why don't you stop and think before you ruin someone's life?
He watches Pax get himself into trouble with Darkwing after warning him not to, and then D-16 gets punched in the face for it. He listens to Pax's crazy race plan and disapproves, concerned about the consequences.
What if I kill you for waking me up?
No, hear me out.
Pax gets some incredible seating for the race, but it turns out to be a trick to get him involved in said crazy race plan.
Why'd you bring jetpacks?
They have an argument about the crazy race.
You know what? I can't believe you made me do that. We are so screwed.
Pax persuades D to a dangerous adventure after D initially disapproved again, mind you. This one's a little more iffy because, he actually agreed to go, but still. Obviously, they witness the truth of Sentinel, and then they have this crazy argument, And when you listen to this argument, I want you to pay attention to what D-16 is upset about here. It's almost confusing why he's so upset at Pax when Sentinel's betrayal probably sits heaviest here in this moment. But listen to what D is trying to tell Pax.
What did I do?
You just had to go to the surface, had to enter the Iacon 5000. You just had to break protocol.
Who cares about protocol?
I do. I care. Because nothing bad happens when you stay on protocol. So that's the whole thing. You're never thinking about anything else, just yourself. Fantastic. Another Orion Pax master plan. I can't wait to hear this.
He is not just upset that Sentinel took away his life. He's tired of the idea of letting anyone telling him what to do. Tired of paying the consequence for someone else's mistakes.
Sentinel bought himself power and then put us to work, paying off his debt.
And it's sad, but that applies to Pax too.
But we all know that it doesn't matter what I want, right, Pax?
Just to be clear, I am not trying to say D-16 absolutely despises Pax. Of course he doesn't. But that doesn't make these interactions any less viable. Like, that these little frustrations he has aren't actually building up. Eventually, with everything compounding together at once, he just can't stand certain things anymore. He'll reach a breaking point, cross the line into red, and he'll never look back.
Once it's crossed, there's no going back. Because some transformations are permanent.
I mentioned earlier that this was D-16's like 180 turning point, solidifying him in this independent, self-driven direction that his willingness to listen to and trust in somebody else's orders is blocked off. Now, I want to mention that we see it here in his relationship with Pax, too.
Someone has to do something.
We are. With Alpha's proof inside that device, we will show everyone the truth.
You honestly believe it'll be that easy? There's got to be a better way to bring him down.
Pax trusts Alpha Trion? Well, Pax's idea has always led me into trouble. Why should I trust him anymore? And obviously, D-16 isn't exactly on board with Alpha Trion's plan either. Leadership failed him, and he's never letting that happen again. Now, think about this. What is Pax doing in response to D-16's decisions for the rest of the story?
Stop! D! He's not the enemy!
He is trying to persuade D from taking this path. But D is done with that. He is done letting Pax decide what is best for him. From his perspective, Pax is slowly becoming just another bot trying to take away his autonomy to do what he believes is right.
Arachnet is the answer.
I'm doing this my way.
And when you put it like that, it's hard to deny and say otherwise. So, now we finally get to the climax of D-16's arc, where he is finally able to, fight back against Sentinel. And guess who was the last bot standing in his way?
What are you doing?
It's over, D.
Pax confronting him here is like the ultimate decision being placed onto D-16's hands. If you really want to walk this path, if you really want to see this through, you are going to have to deal with your closest friend first. Are you ready for that? To throw away any living shred of that relationship down into the pits? D-16 actually tries to avoid this loaded choice. He tries moving Pax out of the way to finish Sentinel off, but of course, that is not a real choice, and Pax would have never let that happen. And instead, we get the most gut-punching resolution to the whole ordeal. Pax makes this last-ditch effort to prevent D from taking action. And now we're hanging on one final chance. Pax hanging on D-16's grasp above certain doom. And D is confronted with one final question once again. Are you willing to throw it all away? And now that we're back here under all the previously discussed context, all after Pax was willing to gamble his entire life on stopping D-16 from doing what he wants, and yeah, he is willing to let go.
I'm done saving you.
I can't believe after all this time you still will put yourself in harm's way when I tell you not to. I am over it. I'm over everything about the past. I'm over dealing with the consequences of your actions. I am ready to let go. And I believe this is the takeaway we're supposed to get with Megatron out of this scene. And this is the ultimate answer I was looking for with this analysis. Why did D-16 kill Orion Pax? Because things have changed. He's tired of dealing with the consequences of other people's actions. He is done letting people decide what is right for him. He was over it with Sentinel, and he's over it now with Orion Pax. I mentioned earlier something being so interesting about studying these relationships, and it's all these comparisons between Pax and Sentinel from D's perspective. That's why I wanted to take the time to describe both of them separately. You look at the way D-16 is frustrated by these two, and the similarities just start writing themselves out. It's scary, really. It's tragic. In a lot of ways, this is also a step forward for D-16, literally letting go of the past here. By choosing to sever this relationship, he's committed to this new direction in life, and that is more or less symbolized by his transformation to Megatron. Letting go of his past name, it's why his eyes turn red the very moment he makes this choice. It's time to move on. And that is the tragic, doomed reality of D-16's relationship with Orion Pax. Just to add, I know this entire video was basically describing the story from the perspective of D-16 as our protagonist, but I did want to point out just how tragic it is that both of them more or less regret how things turned out, but understand what lies ahead of them. Admittedly, I'd painted Pax in a pretty negative light here, but all things considered, he really did want the best for his friend, and even in all those dangerous times, he always did have D-16's back. Oops, wrong clip, sorry. He always envisioned them both moving forward together, not separated.
I did this for us. I'm thinking about what we're going to do. We could have built the future together.
For both of them to take that step forward, though, it first took a step away from each other. And that is where the tragedy lies for this story. It's ironic when you think about it. Both of them would say this to each other. You betrayed me the same way Sentinel did. For D-16, Pax betrayed him by denying his ability to act for himself, for constantly getting him into danger without his consent. Just like how Sentinel deceived them into a life of labor. I mean, he literally replaced Sentinel as a Prime leader right after D finally closed out the story of the Primes.
Primus gave you the Matrix.
For Pax, D-16 betrayed him by, well, this one's a little more in your face. He turned to violence, choosing to abuse his power to tear other people down the same way Sentinel did. To him, D-16 would be continuing this broken cycle that he's trying so desperately to stop. Alright, real quick, I'm going to go over some takeaways from a writing perspective because I think there's an interesting formula here. How do you write a tragedy between two characters who share a really close bond? At least in the way that Transformers 1 did it. First, we have a setup. This is the first half of the story in TF1. In the setup, we get a few things. We introduce two characters who are both the most important person in each other's lives, right? We invest the audience in their bond and their relationship. We'll call them characters A and B. And then we introduce some sort of small frustration about their relationship, voiced by one of the two characters, let's say character B. It doesn't have to be big, but it's a small itty-bitty detail that's present at nearly every moment of their arc. And then we introduce an evil villain, and this villain is an externalized, extreme representation of that frustrating element that's eating into the relationship. Right, that's our setup. Next, we have the turning point and the downfall. For TFO, this is the Sentinel reveal and everything following that. This turning point starts with the villain harming character B in some sort of way, and this causes character B to make a dramatic turn in their arc, and we see them deliberately making an effort to never have to deal with said frustrating thing ever again. This eats into their relationship with character A, and that's demonstrated through an argument or some sort of dissent following the villainous act. And in the rest of the story, we continue to see this new direction for character B sow discord into the relationship. With character A, they continue being who they are, and that in and of itself continues to fester the frustration building in character B.
Let's break some protocol.
And then, tragedy. Eventually, we get closer to the climax, to defeating the main villain, but after all this buildup of dissent throughout the story, we get this devastating reality that things just cannot go back to how things were in the first half. And this is confirmed by some ultimate dramatic decision by one of the characters choosing to let go of their relationship. And this is how we end up with this broken friendship, with this double-sided betrayal, where even after the main villain is dealt with, we're left with this sense of longing, of doom, like we lost something. Let's be clear, by the end of the movie, we're barely thinking about Sentinel anymore. It's just Megatron and Optimus, and we're just like, what the heck? So yeah, setup. Introduce us to a close bond, sprinkle in some frustration from one of their perspectives, then introduce a villain who embodies that frustration in the most extreme way possible. Then the turning point and the downfall. The villain harms this frustrated character, that character in turn goes through a turning point in their arc to combat their anger, and that begins to wedge into their relationship, playing on the frustrating similarities between villain and friend. And then the climax decision, tragedy. We defeat the main villain, but at what cost? Things are unable to go back to how they were, and our two characters are unable to accept each other anymore. So, doomed from the start? Who knows? I just wanted to point out some of the similarities in how D-16 perceives his relationship with Sentinel and Orion Pax, because you go and look back at all the details and it really does all add up. It's more intricately written than I would have expected from this film, and I'm honestly impressed, you know. I'm glad so many fans are receiving the movie well because it's admittedly pretty dang solid. I've seen some great discussion already, and it's been like 3 days, literally. Hoping for a sequel. Subscribe for more, I think. I might be doing more stuff like this in the future. I still have many questions about the film that I do want to explore. There's a lot of other characters I haven't touched upon, a lot of repeating themes and phrases that I haven't really drawn connections to. Even Pax. There's a lot more to this guy than I talked about here, despite him being like half of the video's topic, so sorry. Admittedly, I knew the first thing I wanted to do was to dive into D-16's character because he is just chock full of contradictions begging to be explored. And well, I'm glad I did. I feel like I understand a lot more about this character than I did at first watch, and I hope you learned something too. Anyways, discuss down below what you think. I'd be glad to hear your thoughts as always, and I wish you all a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.